Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? I see you've come back for more. If you're new here, buckle up, and thank you for joining me today. My name is DeRay, aka Rainbow Fright, lover of all things dark, creepy, and weird. Today's film review will be on sci-fi horror, The Fly.
I'm looking at you. I can tell you're okay. What are we waiting for? Let's do it.
August marks the 35th anniversary of this classic. The Fly was a childhood favorite of mine. I don't even know how many times I've watched it. I was watching really gory stuff at an early age. I was just drawn to it. There are definitely going to be spoilers in this video, so be prepared for that. Now let's get into the summary, and then I'll break it down and talk about the making of this film and my thoughts. But first, I want to give a shout out to King Gore. I think you'll like his channel just as much as mine. He's all about horror, hip-hop, and those chill vibes. He's also a songwriter and producer, so along with his movie reviews and lists, he also drops short films and music videos. He also nominated me for Horror Tuber of the Month for the month of August, and I can't thank him enough for this nomination. I have already gotten so many new subscribers because of this. And I've also found some other really great horror content creators. To vote for me, just leave my name in the comments of the video that I'll link down in the description and in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to King Gore. He uploads multiple videos a week, so there's never a shortage of content. Although he is taking a bit of a break to write, film, and edit a lot of content, so until he uploads his next video, go ahead and check out what he's already uploaded. Well, alright, let's get into the summary of The Fly. This tragic love story begins when Seth Brundle meets Veronica Quaife at an event hosted by the company who was funding his work. Not realizing that she is a journalist, Seth shows Ronnie his teleportation pods that, for now, can only teleport inanimate objects. Once she tells him that she's recording him and plans to do a story on his work, he asks her for the tape, but she refuses and leaves in a hurry. Ronnie's editor and ex-lover, Stathis, doesn't believe that Brundle has created such a groundbreaking device. Dismissed, Ronnie is convinced by Brundle to not do a magazine write-up, but instead get the full rights to the story if she can wait for him to successfully teleport himself. Their first experiment together was with a baboon, which was unsuccessful, and the poor thing was turned inside out. It's about this time that Veronica begins to fall in love with Seth, even though remnants of her previous relationship still linger. After making love for the first time, Ronnie finds a piece of Seth's machine stuck in his back, leaving behind 3 cuts, which foreshadows him becoming one with his work. Seth finally realizes that the machines are creating a synthetic version of flesh instead of the original flesh. After learning this, he successfully teleports a second baboon. While celebrating, Ronnie finds a threat to expose the telepods from her jealous ex-lover. She rushes out of Seth's warehouse/home/laboratory to confront Stathis, but in turn, Seth becomes jealous, thinking she has gone to rekindle her relationship with her ex. After having one too many drinks and letting his ego get the best of him, he haphazardly hops into the telepod as the baboon watches on. We see a fly stuck in one of the telepods, and you just know that this isn't going to end well for Seth. He exits the telepod seemingly completely normal. Later that night, Ronnie returns, and he kisses her like it's the sweetest kiss he's ever tasted. Soon after that, he begins to notice that his body is much stronger than it was before. He explains to Ronnie that he believes the telepods have purified him, making him the best version of himself. Ronnie finds strands of hair coming from his wound from earlier and cuts them off, which she later takes to a lab to get tested. Seth tries to convince Ronnie to go through the telepods so they could be the dynamic duo, but she refuses. This upsets Seth. Realizing Seth's personality has also changed, Ronnie tries to tell him that something went wrong when he teleported. Angered by her accusation, he storms out in search of someone else to put through the telepods. After winning an arm wrestling match, he takes his prize, the loser's date, home with him. He tries to convince her to go through the telepods, but she also refuses. This is when Ronnie shows up and delivers the famous line, "Be afraid. Be very afraid." When the woman leaves, Ronnie tells him the results of the lab test, which came back as insect hair. He doesn't want to hear it and kicks Ronnie out. However, Seth begins to realize that she may be right when he can't shave his facial hair and his nails begin to fall off. He then goes to his machine and reviews the data from his first teleportation. This is when he realizes that there was a fly in one of the pods, and they are now fused together at a molecular genetic level. From here, Ronnie witnesses his fast transformation. Every time she sees him, he's worse. She intends to tell him that she's pregnant and is going to have an abortion. Looking more grotesque than ever, she can't bring herself to tell him and runs out to Stathis, who has set up a midnight doctor's appointment for her. Seth overhears their conversation and ends up snatching her from the doctor's office. After his machine tells him that the only way he could be less of a fly was to teleport with one or more humans, he decides to teleport himself, Ronnie, and the fetus. However, somehow Stathis becomes the hero of the film. Before he rescues Ronnie, Seth throws up his acidic vomit on his hand and ankle. Just before vomiting onto his neck, Ronnie distracts him. He then throws her into one of the pods, but Stathis is able to shoot the cables in time, saving Ronnie from fusion. But Brundlefly, who was once Brundle, is now Brundleflypod. Knowing there is no hope left, he gives Ronnie his blessing to blast his brains out. Ronnie then kills her lover. This childhood favorite satisfies every time I watch it. I can't imagine anyone else other than Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis in these roles. Michael Keaton was actually offered the role, but he thought it was a bit too disturbing. Only a few years later, he and Geena Davis did Beetlejuice. Leave a comment down below and let me know what your top 3 Geena Davis movies are. Mine are The Fly, Beetlejuice, and A League of Their Own. Mel Gibson was also considered for the role, but he was busy with Lethal Weapon. They even thought about Richard Dreyfuss and John Malkovich. A young John Malkovich would have been wild in this one, but nah, we needed that Goldblum twitch. It was actually Cronenberg who had to fight to get Jeff Goldblum. So let's start from the beginning. The Fly is a remake of the 1958 film of the same name.
I transmitted myself successfully yesterday morning, but in a second experiment, a fly which I did not notice was in the disintegrator with me. When we integrated again, our atoms were mixed. Now my only hope is to find the fly.
The original film was an adaptation of a short story by George Langland that was published in Playboy magazine. Fast forward to the 80s, producer Kip Oman reached out to screenwriter Charles Edward Pogue with the idea of remaking this 50s sci-fi flick. After reading the story and watching the film, Edward thought that the story could use a little bit of work, but ultimately was interested in the project. His main issue with the story was that the fly and the scientist just switch heads, and he didn't really understand why. Pogue then took the idea to another producer, Stuart Kornfeld, who immediately was excited about this project. Kornfeld went to 20th Century Fox, and after some back and forth with Pogue's script, they said that they would distribute the film if they could find another way to fund the production. Kornfeld then went to Mel Brooks, a known producer of comedy films. So as not to confuse audiences, Mel Brooks asked that his name be left out of the credits so that they wouldn't think that it was a comedy film. He also thought that the script needed a different writer. So after essentially firing Pogue, hiring a new screenwriter, they brought Pogue back to polish it up again. While all this was happening, they were also looking for a director, and Cronenberg was their first choice. choice. However, at the time, he was working on Total Recall, so he had to decline the offer. So they brought in Robert Bierman, who was excited to make this movie the best film of all time. But just before principal photography, his daughter was killed in an accident. And after a few months with production on hold, he finally told the producers that he would no longer be able to work on the project. At this time, David Cronenberg and Dino De Laurentiis were having creative differences on Total Recall that couldn't be resolved. So Mel Brooks asked Cronenberg again, and he accepted. He had just one condition, that he would need to be able to rewrite the script to fit his specific body gore style. A win-win for everyone. Pogue and Kornfeld thought that the metamorphosis of the scientist should be more of a gradual one instead of an instant monster like in the original film. Cronenberg built off this idea and used Pogue's script as a foundation, but he created all new characters and wrote all new dialogue. Other differences between the two scripts was that in Cronenberg's version, you have more of a man-fly hybrid versus Pogue's script where he was just turning into a straight-up fly. And Brundle stayed more of a human and was able to speak throughout most of the film, whereas in Pogue's, he loses his ability to speak about 2/3 into the film. Also, instead of having a married couple, we have Seth and Ronnie, who are starting a brand new romance. Along with body gore, Cronenberg's script highlights a lot of his signature themes of personal identity and sexuality. He has a real talent for exposing people's fears of isolation and rejection, as well as conveying the complexities of the human psyche. There's not really anyone else like Cronenberg. He's done a lot of different kinds of films, but when you watch one of his films, you know that it's his. Some of his non-gore films include Eastern Promises, A History of Violence, Crash, Cosmopolis, and A Dangerous Method. After fighting to get a mostly unknown Jeff Goldblum on the cast, Jeff then went to bat for his then girlfriend Gina Davis. Cronenberg wasn't thrilled about this idea, but after hearing a bunch of other women read the part, he agreed that she was the best one for the role. Their natural chemistry shined on screen. They ended up getting married after the film released, but divorced a few years later. While they are both talented actors, I think that this true romance between them really helped to sell this love story. This is the only Cronenberg film that has won an Oscar, and it went to Chris Wallace for the creation of The Fly. And while he's won plenty of awards, he definitely deserves to have Oscars for many of his films. Before The Fly, Chris Wallace created Gremlins and was a creative consultant on Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. He actually went on to direct The Fly 2, which I haven't seen yet, but I need to. It seems though that a lot of people have turned their nose up at it, but it looks pretty good. The huge fly creature at the end of the film was a huge puppet made up of two parts, the legs and the upper half. And each piece would take 3 to 4 people to operate. The operators practiced for days before shooting even began.
Okay, ready, and guy, reach.
Cronenberg dominated body gore in the 80s. He had films like The Fly, Scanners, and Videodrome, all creepy and weird in their own way, and all just so good. There was also Hellraiser, Reanimator, The Thing, and Society. Y'all, Society is a trip. You gotta brace yourself for that one. One I haven't seen that I wanted to mention was a Japanese film, Tetsuyo, the Iron Man. I checked out a few clips and it looks really good. For Cronenberg, The Fly was an analogy for terminal illness, more specifically the process of aging, dying, and loss. So when audiences thought that this was a metaphor for AIDS, it didn't bother him. AIDS had just been discovered in 1981. And it was spreading rapidly, so it made sense that people associated it with what was happening to Brundlefly. Before scientists knew how to treat it, prognosis for those who were diagnosed with AIDS was 6 to 19 months. And we witnessed Brundlefly decline really rapidly. I'm sure some kids and adults don't even realize that the famous line, "Be afraid," Be Very Afraid originated from this film. It's been used by so many different shows and movies. It was actually something Mel Brooks said on set when telling actors how to react to Seth's transformation. I guess I'm a sucker for love stories within a horror film. This film gets me every time. The love between Seth and Veronica is just so tender. Seth, a gentle giant at 6'4", who even when upset hardly shows it, falls for a woman when he first lays his eyes on her. It takes Ronnie to be impressed first to get her on the same page, but when she does, their love flourishes and it's 100% reciprocated on both sides. While watching their love grow, we know the end is near. Our sympathy for both of them is immense as we see Ronnie's love remain strong even when he's at his worst, even going so far as to hug him when he's covered in his own fly slime. Her ex, Stathis, played by John Getz, is an annoying character throughout the entire film. First he's bad, then he's supposed to be good? I don't know, I just don't know why she would go to him for help in this situation and why he was still hanging around her apartment after she asked for her key back. Like, dude, she's banging somebody else. Get a life. And no, you're not a hero just because you saved her from a teleportation fusion. You're the next thing that she needs to be saved from. Let me know in the comments if you felt the same way I did about this guy. I really love how everything is such a mystery at the very beginning if you haven't seen the first film or read the short story. Before the telepods are revealed, it's hard to tell if Seth is eccentric or evil or both. When they get to his house, he begins to play the piano and it's a bit eerie. It's easy to think that Ronnie just put herself in a terrible situation. Well, she did put herself in a bad situation, but you know what I mean, more of like a slasher type situation, not a sci-fi bad situation. Have you ever wondered what happened to the baboon? It kind of just disappears. Well, there was a deleted scene where he is trying to figure out how to make himself better by fusing a cat and a baboon. The test was unsuccessful and he ends up having to kill the creature, and during the test screening, it didn't go over so well with the audience. So to maintain the audience's sympathy for Brundlefly, they took that scene out. Also, in the scene where he's climbing the walls and ceiling, he points to his stomach and says, "What's this?" I don't know. And it never gets talked about again. Well, there's another deleted scene that shows a fly leg coming out of his stomach, and he actually ends up gnawing it off with his teeth. And this is right before or after he kills a random woman in the street with his fly vomit. Again, to maintain the audience's sympathy for Brundlefly, they cut the scene out. And to create the effect of him climbing the walls, they ended up building a revolving set.
And he likes to eat things that are sugary and sweet, and so we have donuts and decaying rolls and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And all of these have to be nailed and bolted and glued down so that when the set turns upside down, everything just doesn't fall and reveal what's going on. So it's actually very, very tricky to do.
Pretty cool stuff. Even though Seth has a huge ego, he still sees Ronnie as his equal. And his ego is huge. I mean, he buys Ronnie a necklace even after she tells him that she doesn't wear jewelry. Talk about claiming your property. But their love is the kind of love that we all hope for. So to see it come to a tragic end, it fills me with so many emotions every damn time. The Fly earns 4.5 rainbow skulls. And if you haven't seen this one, do yourself a favor and watch it on its 35th anniversary. You won't regret it. Well, thank you again for joining me today, fellow Stardust. I appreciate you being here with me. Check out my update video that I'll be uploading this Saturday to find out what's going on here in the next week and the next several weeks. Nothing major, just moving always sucks, so you can expect some changes here and there, but the content will still be coming. So, if you haven't already, go ahead and hop on the Rainbow Fright Freight Train and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. That way you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. I hope I see you next time. Peace.